Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malach Me'elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malach Me'elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Zichem Shalom, Malachei Shalom. Shalom, Malchei, Shalom, Malachei, Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Yasher Koach. Thank you so much, Jackson, for welcoming us with such beautiful music this evening. We invited Jackson to begin us with Shalom Aleichem because when we invite people into our home, which is almost hard to remember, but when we invite people into our physical home around our Shabbat table, we always start off by telling people that, you know, when we think of Shabbat, the Shabbat table rituals, we think of Kiddush, blessing over the wine, and Motzi, the blessing over the challah. But there's a third component that is essential to us in our Shabbat practice, which is welcoming in our guests, our angels, our messengers of God. And we thank our guests every time for being present, for giving us the opportunity to celebrate and elevate our Shabbat table, our Shabbat experience. And so we wanted to offer the same gratitude to you tonight for being here and offering us the blessing of elevating tonight in this moment for us. So welcome, our messengers of God. It's so wonderful to be with you. Well, just to give you a quick overview of the evening, we're going to start off with a little experiential experience, and then you'll have a chance to hear from a BASE co-founder and executive director to hear a little bit about how the BASE story got started. You'll hear a little bit from Matt and me. You'll hear from Rabbi Hamilton, and you'll hear from some of our BASers reflecting on the last year and looking forward to the year ahead. And don't worry, we'll be sure to get you out by 9:15 like promised. So I imagine that most of us have spent a fair amount of time in Zoom rooms over the past year. We hope that this one will feel a little bit different. As we've all become all too accustomed to virtual gatherings, used to seeing one another in Zoom boxes neatly separated into equal sizes, it's almost difficult to remember what it's like to gather in person. But BASE is all about celebrating the intimacy of the home, even virtually. So today we want to welcome you into our virtual home. We thought that we'd try to transport you to our living room through a little guided meditation. So bear with us a little bit. If meditation's not your thing, that's okay. We try to encourage people to try things that are a little bit outside of their comfort zone. So as you feel comfortable, I'll invite you to close your eyes. If you prefer doing this with your cameras off, by all means, please do so. Or you can use the images that we'll show to prompt your imagination. As you take a deep breath in and out, imagine yourself coming up our brick walkway in Brookline. Maybe you drove, maybe you took the T, maybe you rode your bike. Maybe you came alone, maybe with your spouse, a roommate, or a group of friends. Maybe this is your first time here, or maybe you've been here more times than you can count. However you're coming, know that you are most welcome. Imagine now the door you'll open. It sticks a bit, like a good old wooden door in Boston that's been warped by weather and painted far too many times. But you notice a sign welcoming you, inviting you upstairs. As you approach our unit's door, you see a mezuzah on the doorpost, one of the many symbols you'll see throughout the evening of an intentionally lived Jewish life within its threshold. Before you can knock, the door is open. You immediately feel the warmth from the homemade food waiting on the table, the cozy vibe of those already gathered and schmoozing, and the faces of your hosts as we take your coats, offer you something to eat or drink, and invite you to find a spot on the couch. As you open your eyes and turn your cameras back on, take a moment to share with us in the chat how you feel entering this space. I see welcomed, warm, calm. Now I see more things than I can read.
Excited.
Excited. We're excited too.
A lot of warm. I guess it's cold out there.
It is cold out there and it's warm in here. So welcome. Just as we would orient you to our home, we would show you where the bathroom is. We would give you something to eat or drink. We hope that you'll feel invited to, it's casual. It's a casual night. So we'll invite you also, if you need to use the bathroom or grab a snack, make yourself at home as you would normally. As you know, hospitality is really the central component of our work. This is what we do, even virtually. So to share with you a little bit more about BASE and how it came to be, it's my true privilege to introduce BASE's co-founder and executive director, Faith Leiner.
Thank you so much. Wow. I feel such a beautiful beginning, both the music, Jackson, and to be brought into your home. I've actually never been able to be in your home in Boston, but I feel like I got a little bit of the energy and the sweetness. And I know there was a little sadness for me, like when we had that image of the door open, I wanted the next image, which was like Baser sitting on the couch. But unfortunately, we've had these months where that hasn't been possible. So I definitely feel this yearning, as I'm sure so many other people do. Well, it's my honor to have a few minutes to speak with all of you tonight. My name's Faith Leiner, and as Elizabeth mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of BASE and our executive director, which means I have the honor of overseeing the enterprise now, which we have 9 bases, and God willing, we'll have 10 this summer. And I'm going to share a little bit about the vision and the dreams and the hopes that kind of brought this to bear, and really what grounds us in the work that we do. And, at any point, if there are questions, you should feel free to pop them in the chat. But you can always follow up with me if you do have questions. I also want to say it's really an honor to be here with the KI community and with Rabbi Hamilton and all of the base Boston basers, because I've heard so much through the lens of Rabbi Hamilton and through Elizabeth and Matt. And so it's really an honor to be here with your community. And even though I'm one of the founders of the original base and bringing this concept from Shemaim into the world, Elizabeth and Matt are very much co-founders of Base Boston in their own right. Any bases up to this point have really been guided by the institutions and the rabbinic couples who wanted to bring them to life. And Elizabeth and Matt worked tirelessly for an entire year to take this from a part-time gig to a full-time position. So while I may be a small piece of our early chapter, they're very much an integral part of the chapter that we're in today. So I'll just take us back about 5-6 years. My husband was in rabbinical school, and we were talking with our best friends at the time, Avram Malotek and Yael Kornfeld, about what are we going to do when our partners finish rabbinical school? How are we going to show up in the world and serve in a way that's most impactful, and what's really needed out there? And the idea that kept coming up for us was what we just saw in our own lived experience in our own lives, which was that most of our friends and communities, besides the rabbinic schools, were secular and were searching for a lot of answers in this life period, which is increasingly long, where you kind of leave the institutions and the support structures of college, and you're looking for a place to land. You're looking for a place to feel seen, where you can make new friends, where you can receive guidance. Increasingly, there are so many life moments that happen when you do leave college, right? You're trying to pay your rent, you're trying to potentially find a partner, you're trying to figure out, do I want to even live in this city that I'm in? It's a really full time. And then you add on, many of the regular challenges of life with mental health issues arising and ailing parents and broken relationships. So there's a lot of content, and we as the Jewish community haven't created really robust institutions to hold that life moment. Of course, our dear colleagues at Moishe House have created an amazing system that allows for tremendous socialization among Jews. And we ask the question, well, what about all of this, all of the pastoral component of what people need? And what about seeing Judaism as a project that you probably learned a lot about when you were 11 or 12, but maybe haven't really revisited as an adult and given it a chance? And so we looked around and said, clearly there's demand. We're hosting in our homes. People are coming. They're asking us questions. They're treating us like we're already, their rabbi and rebbitzin, so to speak. Why isn't there something here? And we looked at our colleagues in the Jewish world and said, by far the most successful seems to be this Chabad movement, these ultra-Orthodox Jewish couples who are so warm. If you've been into a Chabad, they're all different, but I think for the most part, they're really warm and they're really open and really excited. And we said, there's so much good there, but why isn't there a pluralistic movement that looks like this? Why isn't there a place for Jews and rabbinic leaders and rabbis from all different backgrounds, whether that be where they got smicha or, how they identify or where they hold on halacha? Why aren't we holding those voices up and those leaders? Why isn't there a pluralistic movement like this? And so we started dreaming and scheming and had an amazing opportunity to pitch that to our first home at Hillel International's Office of Innovation, and really bring to life these ideas of saying, what if we spent all of our time welcoming people in? What if that was our strategic focus, was finding people who would never feel comfortable in a synagogue or going to a JCC or bringing their partner who's not Jewish, or fill in whatever part of their identity they felt like had been rejected, really making space for them. And so we started quickly in New York with 2 bases, with a lot of help from the Federation there. And there was extreme demand very quickly, as you might imagine. I think for a lot of folks, base, it's really our home. It's really started in the living room. So there's this deep sense of intimacy and authenticity right away. And to do this work, you have to really be called to do it, right? It's not a part-time gig. It's a full-time immersion. It's like the mikvah of Jewish life. And so that's how we got started. And, I'll just say some of the key things that have really driven us through all of it is just recognizing that at the end of the day, people are looking for meaning and purpose and joy, and to feel like our tradition has something to say about those things and that they have a place at the table. And that's what we try to do at Base. And we're very excited about a new chapter that we're about to embark on with our colleagues at Moishe House, which I'm sure we'll hear more about in the weeks to come. But it's really an honor to do this work. As I mentioned, we have 9 bases in New York, Chicago, Boston, Berlin, Miami, and Ithaca. And I think, those are the most important things that I want to share with you today, but it's really an honor to be here. And I'm really excited to hand it off to my dear new colleague, Rabbi Hamilton, to speak a little bit more about how we got the KI partnership started. Because for us, this was the first time that we partnered with a synagogue. And there was a lot of really interesting questions about, does that make sense? Base had positioned ourselves as kind of non-institutional. And so what does it mean to be in partnership with such a rooted institution and that is, doing tremendous work. So I am honored to hand it off to you, Rabbi Hamilton.
Thank you so much, Faith. It is an honor to be here with all of you. And I just want to say how excited I am on behalf of all of us at KI to celebrate this remarkable partnership on the anniversary of its having been launched a year ago prior to COVID, and the remarkable things that have happened in this time under the tremendous leadership of Rabbi Elizabeth Bonnie Cohen for KI's Base Boston, and the partnership with Base National and you, Faith, and the tremendous work you're all doing is something that we're particularly excited about. Many of you know KI prides itself as a forward-thinking institution. We have partnerships with lots of kindred agencies that do great work. We believe that this raises the ships on all fronts and is great for the Jewish people and for touching lives, which is what we're all about in terms of trying to bring the beauty of Jewish life into each other's hearts and beings, and certainly into each other's homes. And we love agencies that are reaching for excellence all the time. And we recognize that immediately as we learn more and more about Base. And I thank both Matt and Elizabeth for their tremendous leadership in suggesting the partnership, and then learning more about it has been something that we have believed in from the very, very beginning at KI. The partnership, its potential, and again, its remarkable capacity to transform the lives of the people increasingly by the dozens and fistfuls that it touches more and more with each passing week, and over the course of the number of souls it reaches each month, and has we'll hear more about that too. But I just want to say that 2 things about this partnership that are things that we deeply believe in and are moved by. Faith, you just shared the origin story of Base, which is really inspiring to hear about. What I find remarkable is that the origin story, our people's unique setting for the sacred, that is the Bayit, the base, the home, is actually something that we're going to learn about beginning in next week's Torah portion, the cycle of Shabbat readings. And ever since a home was established as a way to be able to feel a sense of deep belonging and meaning and purpose and joy, as you just so beautifully articulated, ever since the home became that original setting, we have looked to ways in which to make the Beit Knesset, the house of assembly, the house of learning, the house of prayer, the miniature sanctuary that is each of our homes, so beautifully embraced now as we're all at least present in our own ways in Rabbi Bonnie Cohen and Matt Bonnie Cohen's home tonight. It is something that we're very, very interested in, the way in which an institution with a campus like KI has, with our multiple partners, feels more like home. We want that to rub off on our institution because we deeply believe in it. It is a tried and true formula that was founded and originated in God's Torah, in next week's Torah portion with the tabernacle, and to be a part of the 21st century Jewish world with an agency that is leading the way toward excellence in this area, modeled on some proven data, as you suggested, from Chabad. That's something that's profoundly exciting to us. Also, the sense of being able to be there, as I think I've said to you when we've talked about the way in which we can reach further in the coming years as we build this partnership. I like to see us as the sort of place that is at Terminal E at Logan Airport, that is just like waiting for people to get off their birthright trips and just come right in to the Bonnie Cohen household, and ultimately, by extension, the greater sense of home that we as a community want to provide through KI and the remarkable partnership that Base Boston embodies. All these things and more are what excites us. And I also want to point out the reality that what I love most about Base National and this partnership is something that I feel is particularly exciting, which is that the very best ideas are in front of us. The very best notions of what we're going to create and the possibility are all ahead of us. Base National keeps that at the forefront. And as all of us work to try to move through this period and look forward to a time when, yes, after the quarantine and after we're through this very, very challenging period and we've got those birthright planes landing again, we will find remarkable ways to see those ideas brought to life. To hear how it's happening now and why it is that we feel so gratified at KI to be part of this exciting partnership, I'm going to turn things back over to Faith to introduce our basers.
So before we do that, I'm actually going to have an opportunity to do a little interview with Elizabeth and Matt and give them an opportunity to reflect on what drew them to this work. And, I think as Rabbi Hamilton alluded to, obviously it's not Terminal E yet. It's like being built. But despite not being at Terminal E yet, there has been so much work that's happened this year. One of the benefits of being Base is that we always say we're about people, not programs. So when you're about people, there's always people to serve. So they have been working tirelessly, and I'm excited to ask them a couple questions. So Elizabeth and Matt, my first question, just to get us in the room while we're all here, is what brought you to this work? What drew you? Why is your heart here? Because obviously it is an immersive way to live out your rabbinate.
I'll start off. And before I answer the question, I want to start with a hakarat hatov, or a recognition of what is good. There's been so much generosity so far this evening, and I'd be remiss not to just say that I'm just so overwhelmed seeing everyone here tonight. So as I say to our son Maor when we say Modeh Ani every morning, I'm just so grateful for the brachot that Hashem has bestowed on us and the love that we have in our house. And of course, Faith, for your leadership and your partnership, and as you said, getting us from being a part-time kind of startup, kind of fledgling experience and scrappy wannabe to being able to do this in a really exciting way with an institution that means so much to us, and actually is where we met. So that's a very important part of our story. And of course, to the KI leadership, to Rabbi Hamilton for 25 years with this community, leading this community, and to Gordon Bennett and to David Williams and many people on the KI board who have made this happen. And there are a lot of people who have worked very hard to get us here. And to people who have donated their time and money, and to our many basers. Many of them are on the call tonight, and it really doesn't happen with just two people. It happens with it's that proverbial, it takes a village to raise a kid. It takes a whole community to build a base. So thank you so much, everybody. But to answer your question, Faith, it starts with love for me. It's my love for Elizabeth, and it's a good thing because we spend a lot of time together in this project, a lot more time than many couples do, I'm sure, in their professional lives together. But it's really the love of bringing people into our home, and the story that Faith you shared about bringing people into your own home as you were beginning base a number of years ago really resonates with us. It's one of the things that we loved most doing once we started first dating, and then from being engaged to being married to every stage in our life. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a home where we had Shabbat dinner every single week. I know that's not the case for a lot of people, and certainly in our demographic, that's not something that people should take for granted. And so for me, it's the opportunity to be able to create this experience that people can say, oh, that's what I want my life to look like, or that could help me think about what I want my life to look like. So that's just something that comes to mind.
Yeah. And then just to build off of that, obviously we're not inviting people into our physical home right now, but we are inviting people into our lives. And I think that so much of what we teach is really about sharing different elements of our life with people, and it provides that kind of intimacy that hopefully we can kind of nurture in kind of like a living room-esque environment, even on Zoom. I'll say for me that this work started long ago. For those of you who don't know, I didn't grow up Jewish, and after I made the decision to begin the conversion process, I went to a Friday night service. I had only experienced Hillel before, but I went to a Friday night service at a shul, my first shul that I'd gone to. And of course I showed up early, and it was a dead giveaway that I was a fish out of water, to say the least. And I sat down, I sat down in, the first chair I could find. There were only like 2 men in the room. And I just grabbed whatever book I had underneath my chair and opened up to a random page. And a man came over and he just very sweetly handed me a siddur and said, "You're going to want to use this one." And I, coyly took it, thank you, whatever. And afterward, he came back over to me and introduced himself. And he said, "Is this your first time here?" I was like, "Yeah, what gave it away?" And he proceeded to welcome me. And then he asked, "Well, what are you doing for dinner tonight?" And I said, "I don't know, I'm just going to go home and have dinner." And he said, "No one should spend Shabbat alone. Why don't you come to our house? My wife's prepared food. We have guests coming. We would love to have you at our table." And his hospitality, his generosity in that moment is something that I carry with me to this day. I tell people that I fell in love with Judaism through reading books and experiencing ritual, but it was really sitting around that Shabbat table that I felt Judaism loved me back for the first time. And I really felt like I could envision what it meant to have a Jewish life and a Jewish community, and to feel that kind of love that Matt was describing. There are even people on this call tonight, Adele Reinhardt's and Barry Wallfish, who were at that meal, who have been strongholds in my Jewish journey, and who I still hold so dearly. And so I think for me, I knew in that moment or shortly thereafter that this is what I want to do. I want to give forward what was given to me, that love that was shown to me. I want to show that to others.
Wow, Elizabeth, that line, I feel like it should be our new tagline, which is "Judaism loves you back," right? If everybody felt that, we would have succeeded at our work. Beautiful. Thank you both. So my next question is, it's been a unique year. So I'm sure the answer probably looks different than maybe prior, but maybe not, right? Our issues are universal. So what are you learning from your basers? What's going on in their lives right now? And what's calling them to either the Base Boston community or to just being in relationship with you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, it's funny in the young adult sphere, people talk about how, young adults, you can get them to do anything. You can get them to show up as long as there's free food. well, when the pandemic hit, there's no free food. We literally have nothing to give people, but people keep showing up and they keep coming. And it's because I think what we're giving them is deep Torah and connection to one another. And that I think has been the thing that I've gleaned from this last year is that people, young people and people in their 20s and 30s aren't just looking for a free meal. They're really looking for depth of Jewish encounter. They're looking for relationships that are built on more than just schmoozing at the bar. And they're looking for that kind of spiritual encounter as well that they can find at base. They're looking to feel empowered in their Jewish lives. And I think that that's something that we really try to offer them. It's interesting this year, especially pastoral care has been front and center in the work that we've done. And there was a research study that I read that said that we think about the isolation of this pandemic year and how hard it's been on like seniors, for example, especially. But this study said that actually those most negatively impacted by the pandemic in terms of mental health is exactly the demographic that we serve, those in their 20s and 30s. These are people who are living by themselves. Perhaps they're living far away from family. Some of them are looking for partners and unable to move that process forward during this time. Some of them are planning weddings or replanning weddings or postponing weddings, trying to conceive children, doing all kinds of things that are very thrown off by this time. And so a lot of what I've done during this time has just been being there for people in a way. We think of young people as not necessarily needing so much pastoral support, and that's actually been the total opposite this year. And I feel grateful to have been able to be present for that.
I'll say we're also learning to touch on that about specifically how our basers, and I think this is true in other communities as well, but they're really seeking people who can share their own personal experiences, not as a way of saying this is the only way to do it, but just to say this is how we do it, this is how we think about it, and maybe that sparks an idea in someone. So just for example, we talk somewhat regularly in classes and in different gatherings about our tzedakah practice. And we talk about how we think about giving, we talk about the regularity. Certainly we talk about how we teach our children about tzedakah. Everybody loves a Maor story. So that's a real part of our community. And just like another example is recently we taught Mayim Chaim's Beyond the Chuppah class over the fall. And we were able to share our practice of Nidah and around mikvah in a way that invited questions from people, in a way that I don't think they would have had we not put it out there and said, this is what we do and this is why. And people shared their own experiences. People asked a lot of really good questions. And it really gave, I think it gave them insight into, oh, this is something I would have never thought about, or now I want to learn more, or as I'm now navigating the beginnings of this engagement, or if they're newly engaged, or this marriage, this is something new in terms of something new to me, but it's a really old ritual, and maybe it can also inform my life.
Yeah, I think that's really important. The fact that it's lived, and again, that goes to the empowerment piece. This isn't just tech study that's for tech study's sake. This is actually what we hope will be informing the way that people live their lives and the kinds of homes that they will then go on to make for themselves as well. Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you. And we'll get to hear from some of your basers later, so we'll see how they feel if those things are true, but
I hope so.
So my last question that I want to ask is really about, this is, as I mentioned before, a unique partnership for us, in that it's the first time that we piloted partnering with an institution like a synagogue. And so I'd love to know, how, from your perspective, Elizabeth, because you wear many hats in this moment, how's it going? And what do you think are the benefits to BASE that you see? You get to be in relationship with all the other BASE teams, so you kind of see the unique vantage point there. So what are the benefits to BASE and what are the benefits to KI? And, just as a second follow up on that, we've talked a lot about as a team and with Rabbi Hamilton, like what are the long-term outcomes that we're hoping to explore together? What is it that we want to learn? Some of the research that we're doing. So I'm sure folks would be interested in sharing a little bit of that as well.
Totally. Do you want to start us off, or do you want me to
You
start?
should, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea of partnering with a shul is like, I think it's brilliant. I mean, I'm biased, but I think it's brilliant because I think one of the limitations of base is that people find base because they're feeling alienated otherwise from the Jewish community, right? Like people who are already really plugged into the Jewish world base isn't necessarily their first stop. But we really specialize in kind of reaching out to the people who the Jewish community has felt intimidating to, the institutional Jewish world has felt intimidating to enter, or has felt alienating for different reasons, or just has not been the entry point. And they come in and they find this really warm, rich, deep community that's really empowering and where they feel connected Jewishly. And then inevitably they age out or they stage out. Perhaps they find a partner, start a family. Perhaps they, move into a different stage in their professional lives, where this is just really not the space for them so much anymore. It can't quite hold their needs. And so then what happens? Then they kind of turn back to the institutional Jewish world, where again, it's still just as intimidating as it was beforehand. So the idea of partnering with a shul, a community that can actually hold people not only in this moment of their lives, but also as their lives evolve. God forbid they lose a parent and they need a place to say Kaddish. We have that at KI. We are a robust community that can follow them throughout their life, no matter what stage they find themselves in. And I think the intergenerational aspect is also really unique. So many young adult endeavors are really siloed. We're just, it's just a bubble of people in their 20s and 30s. And KI, being a really rich intergenerational community, has a lot of opportunities for cross for intergenerational, I keep using that word, but for dialogue and relationship building across the generations. And so we've done some, and we hope to do even more intergenerational learning, hopefully when we're all back in person, Shabbat meals, opportunities to really facilitate some of those connections. That can be professional connections. They can be, they can be service-oriented connections. We've had a number of basers participate in KI's Helping Hands initiative, where they've been delivering meals to folks on Shabbat, and they've been being part of the phone tree and all these kinds of things. And it really begins to feel like a broader community. It's not just a bubble for those in their 20s and 30s, but it's actually a full community that can really embrace them and grow with them as they grow.
And the one thing I'll add is certainly we envisioned this the kind of the first full year of this partnership being one where we could bring people from our home into the big the brand new 384 Harvard Street campus with all the different communities buzzing around, especially on Shabbat morning, and certainly that has looked different this year than expected. But what has been remarkable is that there are a number of people in our community who now will come to KI's Kabbalat Shabbat on Friday evenings on Zoom, or Shabbat morning services, much in the same way that we would hope that would be part of kind of the outcome of this, of getting people in the same room, whether it's the virtual room or the physical room. And so it's really nice that that's happening even in this virtual space.
Yeah, and I think just to speak to that piece, Faith, that you asked about kind of what are our long-term goals, I think that is what our long-term vision is. As we begin to hold more things in person, as that becomes safer for us to do, we look forward to opportunities where we aren't as siloed as these little Zoom rooms make us, but rather we have these kind of semi-permeable membranes where I'm teaching a class on Shabbat morning that's also intermingling with Kiddush, and that people are going into the sanctuary, and that there's more opportunity for integration to break down some of those institutional barriers that otherwise keep young people from entering the synagogue communities.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'll just add something that I know for me was really exciting about particularly partnering with KI for our first synagogue pilot was that, I think KI, while it's a conservative synagogue, has a very deep pluralistic vision for the campus and for the center that they're building and bringing in different minyanims and really having this shared core of believing in a pluralistic Jewish life, of having, a lot of diversity and a lot of different expressions of what Jewish life can look like. And so they've really been the ideal partner to try this out with, to, I think, Elizabeth's point, to see, is there a bridge if you build in a culture of radical hospitality and intellectual honesty and rigor in this like intimate home space, can you then invite people into an institution that they might otherwise not? So I think we've seen some early successes, and we'll keep you all posted on what we learn. But
and
now,
I'll also just add that I think that on that piece about KI is that I think KI as an institution is so similar to the base model in the sense that like we kind of preach a pluralistic message, right? Anybody can come into our home just as they are. We want to help other people find the Judaism that's most authentic to them, and at the same time we have a set practice for ourselves that is, we have a sense of who we are, and we're not shy about saying that we're religious or that we care about tradition and that we care about ritual practice, that these things are values to us and that they enrich our lives. And I think similarly, KI says that in many ways, to say that, tradition is important to us, text is important to us, prayer is important to us. And we hope that you'll be enriched by these things also. And we affirm and support how Judaism is going to play a role in your life, whatever it ends up looking like, which I think is such again, a beautiful way that these two organizations, these two institutions make such beautiful partners. Sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all. And then I went on a whole nother line of thought where I was like, in base, I think we're helping people reimagine what even the word religious means, right? So if you had said that to a lot of basers in the beginning, like, we're religious, they'd be like, oh, I'm not into that. I'm spiritual, or I'm a humanist, right? But then they realize that there's so many things that is meant by that. And then when they meet someone who does say they're religious, they're not completely closed to that, right? Like, so there's just so much synergy and back and forth that, we're seeing already. But I'm excited now to hear from some of the basers. And I think Elizabeth and Matt, you guys are going to be interviewing them. So we are excited to welcome Matt, Naomi, and Lauren.
Yay. Thanks again, Faith, so much.
Thank you so much. So we asked 3 people who have been very involved in our community in very different ways to share a little bit about what their experiences have been. So Naomi, I'll ask you first. And hi, Craig. It's always so lovely to see you as well.
Bonus,
yeah,
baser.
bonus, yeah. And so, Craig, if there's anything you want to add in, feel free, but no pressure, just an invitation. So Naomi, you've been involved in a number of different Jewish young adult spaces in Boston. What did you find missing in those spaces, and what is it about Base Boston that's drawn you in and kept you involved?
Yeah, so before I answer the question, again, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. And I feel really lucky to get to speak on behalf of Base, because it is such an important part of our lives. I think that, I grew up in a conservative home, and then in college and after really floated in Orthodox spaces. And I think that the thing that I found about Orthodox spaces to be really important was some of what Faith spoke about and what you guys spoke about in terms of that home-based connection that you find in those communities. When you have people live close together within walking distance, you really have those home-based communities. However, my practice has really gone back into being more in that conservative space. And when Craig and I were looking for a space together, we wanted to be more in a conservative type community. So we were really drawn both to KI and Base simultaneously, in that KI provided a really traditional conservative space that Craig was comfortable in. Washington Square Minion is on campus, which is a place that I feel really comfortable. And Base was really the place that we could be together in and feel connected. I think that a lot of the things that have been spoken about already are also really important to me. I think the pastoral connection is really important. Elizabeth, you have been a huge support in our lives as we went through planning and then replanning our wedding this year. Um, you know, it also connected us to people who have been really essential in our lives. Matt, who's on the screen with us right now, you know, signed our ketubah, and that never would have happened if we had not been part of this community. Bruce, who is in this room right now because of KI and our connections, you know, helped us plan to safely hold our wedding. And so I think that just the connections between BASE, the wonderful people that you both are, and the it being part of an institution has really kept me and us connected.
Thank you. Oh, you guys are the best. This is by far my favorite. Okay. Okay, my question's for you, Matt Goldberg. So you wear two hats in our BASE spaces. You're both an active baser and a consumer, if you will, of the product of BASE. And at the same time, you're training to be ordained as a Rav Chazan. So I'm curious how your participation with BASE has shaped your view of your rabbinate, your cantorate, and your professional outlook.
Yeah, great question. And thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Any chance to hang out with you all and talk about BASE is a good time. This makes me think of a line from Pirkei Avot that says, "Aseh lecha rav uknei lecha chaver." Appoint for yourself a teacher, a rabbi, and obtain for yourself a friend. And really, I mean, you too, Elizabeth and Matt, over the last number of years since I moved to Boston, and especially I think this past year, through BASE, have been mentors and role models to me in many ways. And some of those ways are what I would call practical rabbinics. I've learned how to interact with community members and congregants and how to be a pastoral presence in crisis moments, how to make people feel heard and valued in person and on Zoom. And you said something a few minutes ago about a Judaism that loves you back. And like, that's why I want to be a rabbi. Like, I didn't have those words, but I want to be a leader of and a sharer of a Judaism that people know loves them back. And it just like, I had a whole plan of what I wanted to say, and that just threw everything. Like that's it. That is the name of the game. So for sure, there's like a personal and professional learning I think that I get from spending time with you and in the BASE world. And there's also something about how BASE is positioned, I guess, in the community that feels important. I've learned that the synagogue doesn't need to be the only place that we build Jewish community, that we can actually create Jewish experience outside of the building. And at the same time, I've been able to watch two organizations team up and work together to engage all of the Jews and to do all of these amazing things. But there's just something about creating Jewish experience and community from home and in the home that feels very empowering to me, both as a clergy student and as a human Jewish person. And just finally, really quickly, to wrap up, people ask me a lot when I say what I'm doing with my life. Oh, what does a rabbi do? And spending time with a rabbi and a rabbinic family in a BASE that I hadn't heard of BASE before last year just opens my ideas and horizons to what a rabbi does and what a rabbinic family can do. And for that, I'm also very grateful.
Oh, thank you so much, Matt. And it's certainly appropriate that we've chosen this for Thursday evening because you've been such a regular in our Thursday evening weekly welcome, which we started, I don't know how many months ago at this point, but basically to try to replicate some of what we have around the Shabbat table. And so it's very appropriate, Matt, that you're here on a Thursday night. Thank you.
And thanks for giving up your weekly welcome spot to be here.
That's right. Lauren, one of the many things we love about you is how important building an intergenerational community is to you. And we've talked about that in many different contexts. How has your involvement with BASE Boston led you to develop relationships at KI beyond your peers?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Matt, and thanks to everyone who's made BASE happen. I think as the folks on this call can hear from just Matt Goldberg, Naomi, and Craig, is this BASE Boston has only been around for a year, but already there's such a deep affinity for it, and that's because of the folks like Rabbi Bonnie Cohen, Matt, Rabbi Hamilton, and Faith that have made it into the place it is. But to the question is, KI is this amazing institution that's been around for over 100 years. And I think especially well, I'll say just for me personally, it could be intimidating to come into shul or to KI and feel like I have a place in this amazing institution with such history. And BASE has made me feel like part of a cohort. It's made me feel like I have ownership and a stake in KI that I perhaps maybe wouldn't if I, as sort of a solo unit, I wouldn't have otherwise. And so when I go into shul, it feels that much more comfortable to turn to the person next to me and say, oh, I'm involved with BASE. And I think too, at a time when there's so much conversation about communicating with people outside of our immediate peer group, the idea of speaking intergenerationally isn't a sort of an area that is discussed as much, and that BASE has really allowed, provided fertile ground to do that. And just the people that I've met, I see several of them on this call that I've developed relationships with and have become close mentors, and just people whose faces I'm so glad to see. And that's what keeps us coming back to institutions.
Thank you so much. Thank you to each of you. And we've asked you one more thing, so I'll invite you now to share with us each a bracha, a blessing, or an intention that you have either on the topic that you spoke to, or in another way that you want to see our community blessed and enriched in the coming year. We'll do it in the same order just to keep it easy. So Naomi, I'll invite you to go first, then Matt, you can follow, and then Lauren.
So my bracha for everyone is that we can continue to build a connected community where we feel supported by each other, no matter what space we're in.
Amen.
I would like to bless Rabbi EVC and Matt and BASE Boston with things I know they already have: creativity, patience, and love, the energy to put in the hard work, and the satisfaction of looking around and seeing it all pay off.
Amen.
I'd just like to have my bracha about the connections that we've fostered, the ties that have been made during this year, a year that's been so tumultuous, and to seeing each other's faces sort of in a different context soon, and also for this event to be a chapter, sort of a beginning in the next chapter of KI's history.
Amen. Thank you all so much. And a teacher of mine, Rabbi Sharon Koenigsfeld, always teaches that a house becomes a home when you invite guests into it. And our house has certainly become a home because of your presence there. And your presence on this Zoom screen. So thank you so much for the richness that you've brought our BASE Boston community. We just, from the bottom of our heart, it means the world to us, and we've felt so blessed to have built this community with each of you. At this point, we'll turn things back over to Faith.
And before we do, an extra thank you to Virginia Mason and Dave Banger, two basers who have helped us with our Zoom facilitation this evening, and also to Jackson Mercer for playing so beautifully at the beginning, and he'll play again at the end.
And we'll invite folks also, if you haven't already, feel free to shift yourselves into gallery view as well. It's a beautiful crowd of folks who have been here tonight. We're so grateful again for your presence here. So feel free to shift into gallery view at any point and just take in the presence of one another. Please, Faith.
So I'm happy to offer a bracha, but actually, Elizabeth and Matt, I'm not going to be the last word. We have a surprise for you. But I will say something small because tonight has been beautiful. First, I want to thank everyone who spent their evening with us. You know, we know it's not the same as showing up to their sweet little apartment number 4. And you know, being on Zoom is not easy. So thank you for being here, the supporters, the fans, the basers, the investors. Everyone really means a lot to us. And my short bracha to you both is that you continue to have the strength to endure while you are physically apart from your community, and that those basers who are out there yet, who don't yet know you, who would never know about KI, who would never know about any of these places, continue to find you in the months and years to come. And it's really, really my honor to actually give the last bracha to a dear rabbi of yours, Rabbi Dan Judson, who is the dean of Hebrew College, and I know who has been with you through many life moments. So we're gonna actually have Rabbi Judson close us down.
Thank you.
Hi guys, it's nice to see you. You heard surprise, and I know you might have been thinking something bigger or grander, but you know,
You're
You're the best.
grand.
you're grand. Thank
You officiated our wedding, Dan.
Yeah,
Grander
that's
things to
true.
be asked for.
I want to thank Faith for offering me this opportunity, and Faith for your leadership in creating BASE and establishing it internationally. I had forgotten that there was a base in Berlin, and you rattled off those cities that BASE is in. To think that you've created something that's really changed the Jewish world. I've overseen not just Elizabeth, but now 2 other students who are now running bases in Chicago and Ithaca, and it's amazing the number of people that you've collectively brought into the Jewish community through this vision. Is really quite remarkable. And so I'm grateful for this moment, but also for the work that you've done in changing the Jewish community, allowing a job like this to exist and come to fruition is amazing. And I also just want to say a quick word to Rabbi Hamilton. I'm not surprised that KI is the only shul that has partnered with BASE. That's not like an accident or something that just happened. It's because Bill has always been thinking about, he's not tied down to what, you know, as he said, he's looking forward. He's never been tied down to what was, wants to constantly be reimagining what could be, wants to be thinking creatively. The campus is a perfect example of that, but this is really also a perfect example of that. He's just not tied down and doesn't want to be tied down to what Judaism was, and wants to think creatively about what's best for the Jewish souls that come into his world. And the recognition that this was going to be good for the Jewish people was enough, I guess, and allowed him to lead KI to be able to into this partnership. So I'm just not surprised that KI is the one place where there's a base KI connection. So when Faith asked me to give you guys a blessing, I gave Elizabeth a blessing at her graduation, her ordination, excuse me. And I talked about my friends who liked her bat mitzvah more than her wedding because she didn't have to share her any blessings that she got at her bat mitzvah, whereas at the wedding she had to share with her husband. So when Faith asked me to do this, I was like, does Matt have to be a part of this? Because we kind of got something rolling here without him. But she was like, no, Matt has to be a part of it. And so Matt, it's nice to be able to get back here and give you both a blessing. And I want to say a little bit of the blessing I gave you at your wedding, and then something different. But the blessing I gave you at your wedding, just to remind you guys and to share with everybody, I ask every couple that I marry to give. Do you guys remember this? I ask every couple that I marry to give me a history of their relationship in some form. They have to give me, it can, you know, and so people like marathon runners gave me the history of their relationship in the form of like, they began in, oh God, where do you begin the Boston Marathon? Whatever that town is. And then 26 miles, where? Help me, Matt. Hopkinton, right. Hopkinton, and then the end. Some people give me the history of their relationship as like a flip book. The first page is we met, like the email that they sent to each other, or the, you know, whatever, some JDate thing that they saw, and then the last page is the day before the wedding. People have given me all sorts of things. Somebody gave me a watercolor painting with their relationship as a little boat and they drew like, this was the, meeting meeting their in-laws or whatever it was. People would give me all sorts of different things to sort of pictorially represent their relationship is what I asked for. Tell me the story of their relationship. So Elizabeth and Matt were the only people, maybe in the 50 weddings that I've done, to give me their relationship in the form of a Torah scroll. Of course they did. Is there any surprise in that? Of course they did. They gave it to me as a Torah scroll. And so the drasha, the blessing that I gave them at their wedding, was about the halacha of writing their own Torah scrolls. And I just want to pick that up, but take it in a slightly different direction. There's a verse in Deuteronomy about a king writing a Torah scroll. So the obligation to write your own Torah scroll is incumbent upon everybody. But most people discharge that obligation now in contemporary Jewish life. People and for generations, for centuries, people have discharged that obligation by either buying a Torah, or most likely by buying a letter of a Torah is how you can discharge the obligation of participating in writing a Torah scroll. Everybody is committed to write their own Torah scroll, but you can discharge that obligation by buying a letter, by participating in some way in the getting of a Torah. There is a special thing though for kings. If you're king, you have to have a Torah scroll. You have to keep a scroll at home and have a scroll with you wherever you go. Scroll in the treasury, scroll at home, scroll wherever you go. You got to have 2 scrolls. And I'm just thinking about Matt and Elizabeth, about this notion that you have a scroll at home and a scroll wherever you go. I was a congregational rabbi for a long time. If you told me I had to sort of try and live Torah in my home with other people all the time, as well as everything I was doing outside of my home, I would have said, there's no freaking way I have the ability to, like, when I go home, I'm going to close the door, I'm going to say thank you very much to my congregation, and I'm just going to be like, I get a Torah outside in the world, and it's not about integrity, it's just about giving, and to give more when you get home is like, it's enough. That's just not about, it's just not who Elizabeth and Matt are. Their capacity to give outside the home, inside the home, there's no distinction for them between the Torah at home and the Torah in the world. They want to give. And from the moment I met Elizabeth, you are somebody who just, the warmth and the desire to give is extraordinary. And you met somebody, and Matt, who shares that. It was, you're saying, Elizabeth, that Judaism loved me back. There's all sorts of comments, and somebody messaged me personally. That's freaking awesome. And it was totally beautiful. But I'm blown away by the first thing that Matt said was that he loved you, and that's what drove the work that he does. That you come to this out of love, both of you, and an ability to serve, and like this, I want to say, insane commitment to give to other people. You have 2 Torahs at home and outside in the world, and you keep both of them. It's a blessing. So at the close of a book of Torah, we say, Chazak, Chazak, Menit Chazak. So that's what I want to say to you now. May you have the strength to continue to give the way you're giving. 2 children has not stopped you. You continue to give and give and give. And it's extraordinary with your 2 Torahs to give in the way that you do. And may you be strengthened in all of your giving. Amen.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you so much, Dan. And what a fun surprise, and really the best surprise. You've just been such a mentor to me personally, to us as a couple. And we're delighted to have you part of this, and so touched by all you've shared. So thank you so much. And again, thank you to all of you for being here tonight, and for celebrating this amazing first year of partnership. It's certainly not how we would have envisioned our first year of being full-time in partnership with KI. It's not a year that probably most of us would have ever envisioned, but it has been a truly sweet one, and we feel so blessed by it. We hope that this has been a little bit of a taste, an inside look at what we have been doing and what we hope to continue to do and build at KI and with Base Boston. And will be closed out this evening by Jackson Mercer, who will sing us out with the end of Shalom Aleichem, which will usher out our messaging angels.
Tzechem leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamalachim hakadosh baruch hu. Tzedchem leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malchei hamelechim hakadosh baruch hu.
Thank you again so much. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and a Chodesh Tov.